name is Jennifer Clement, and I am the president of Penn International.
Tell me a bit more about your latest book, Gun Love.
Okay, well, Gun Love is a book about gun violence in the United States, but I should say that it's a novel. And so yes, it's about how guns affect a community in the United States, but it's also very much a book about how guns come to Mexico. So more or less, a low number is that 20,000 guns illegally cross the border into Mexico every single day. So much of Mexico's problems has to do with this excess amount of guns that can be bought for very cheap throughout the country.
It's a very lyrical book, so it's about a girl and her mother living in a car. So it's not actually, it's not a report on gun violence as such. You're very non-judgmental. So first, take me through what came first. I mean, came the desire to write about that issue that you're aware of, or did the idea of a story first pop into your head?
Well, it's actually quite complex because Gun Love is the diptych to the previous novel, which is Prayers for the Stolen, which is about the stealing of little girls in Guerrero to traffic them. And so actually Pearl is in Prayers for the Stolen. So I had already heard about her. So when I wrote Prayers for the Stolen, not thinking of a sequel, because it's not a sequel, but thinking about what would be the next book. And I realized that character, I could write a whole book about her. And so already in Prayers for the Stolen, I knew I wanted to write about the guns. And so guns are very present in Prayers for the Stolen. And I even have done journalistic pieces. So I would say the interest in the guns and writing about guns probably began in 2009. So I knew I wanted to write about this because I think, like many people in the world, I find it bewildering. Excuse me. I find it bewildering that this gun culture in the United States, it's hard to understand, and I find it also completely amoral because it's such huge business. So for example, the University of San Diego did a study in 2007 that if the guns did not come to Mexico, 47% of gun dealers in the United States would be out of business. So it's a big theme that I don't think is talked about enough. I go to these themes through the door of poetry. So what does that mean to me? That means that in the greatest darkness, to try and find light, in where there is profanity, to try and find the divine, so that where there's ugliness, I place beauty, and that is my poetical intention. So I do think that the reason why these books are both enchanting, because I think they are, and very beautiful, is because I am approaching the darkest subjects with this kind of language. It has to do with the language that I'm using. So it's language that has nothing to do with what you would normally consider you would use to write about these events.
But is that a conscious decision on your part? That you feel that the readership might be wider, or that you just...
Oh no, I think probably the readership is smaller, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, because it's... No, it's a conscious aesthetic decision for me as a writer. And also for me, it's a challenge. So if I ask myself, is it possible for me to write about guns with poetry? Is it possible to do that? And that is my challenge as a writer. So I was very happy in the New Yorker that they said that the book was a poetica of gun violence, like a poetics. So that is what I was trying to do. Like, how would you write about all of this with this kind of language?
How much work goes into preparation, though?
A ton of work. I see my books, they're like icebergs. So what the reader reads is a very small amount compared to what went into writing the book. So, I mean, For example, I've been to the NRA twice. I've interviewed survivors of massacres, like, for example, some of the kids that were in the Batman movie. And, just all kinds of research and interviews. But actually, none of that ended up in Gun Love. But I think the book sits on it, sits on all that research. The same with Prayers for the Stolen. I did so much research for Prayers for the Stolen that you don't see in the novel, but it also sits on it.
How much time are we talking about?
Well, at least sort of with Prayers for the Stolen, at least, 8 years maybe. Gun Love too. It takes me a long time to write a book. So yeah, a long time, because I sometimes need to find my way. Like, I'm not quite sure what my way is. So for example, Gun Love, a lot of people think that maybe I chose Florida because Florida has this reputation of being, very exotic and full of, strange people. But actually, that's not the reason why I chose Florida. I chose Florida because I wanted very much, and I didn't know this until, into the writing very much, that I wanted the spirits of the native people to be in my book. Because actually, and especially with all my travels and everything, one thing that's very clear is that no native indigenous population has ever been able to win against guns. So guns were what wiped out the native population of the United States. And many of those were in Florida, and they walked the Trail of Tears to try and get away. And so in Gun Love, the Trail of Tears is discussed and appears. The spirits of Native Americans appear. In fact, there is a kind of medicine woman, prophetic American Indian who appears on the bus at one stage and can see into Pearl and see who she is. And then towards the end of the book, also, the spirits really help Pearl. So for me, that was very important. And in fact, at one point when one of the characters is killed and another character discusses what happened, it's an echo of what happened in one of the last battle against General Custer, when all the Indians were on their horses running into the English army, and the cry was, "This is a good day to die," because they all knew they were going to be massacred. So I was just in South Africa, and there's drawings that the Zulus have made of, the spear against the gun. And in India, I was just in the tribal areas of India, and there are all these drawings also of the machete, the knife, the spear, the bow and arrow against the gun. So actually, in the United States, the Second Amendment, they talk about this militia, but actually the real reason was the permission to eliminate the whole native population. So that is there in Gun Love, and I didn't realize that was going to be there, and then it kept growing and growing. So I had to do a lot of research on the Native American people and how they had been almost completely exterminated. So those are like surprises that as you do research, you find these doors that open.
Have you ever lived in Florida?
No, but I've been many times.
So how was the process of researching that area and the feel of that area?
Well, I went a few times, but I also received the newspaper on a daily basis from a certain area into my email every day. So for at least about 2 years, I read the local newspaper. And in fact, reading, and it's interesting, I wrote the book under Barack Obama mostly. Well, I guess completely, because he was there for 8 years, yeah. So at a certain point of reading the local newspaper, I started to really feel deeply that the Ku Klux Klan was operating in the area. I mean, I just felt it. And that, it's interesting how reading a newspaper every day, you can start really feeling, what is happening there. And so I put that in. I put the Klan into the book. And sure enough, now with this new president, all these groups that were very hidden are now quite in the open.